The New Tech Times, a video magazine for the electronic age. In this edition, teletext, all the news that's fit to scan. Will it grow to replace the newspaper? Also, calling the plays by computer, a sports new technology love story. Later, a commentary by political columnist Jack Anderson, and a look at computers that can travel. All in this edition of The New Tech Times.
The New Tech Times is brought to you through a grant from Wausau Insurance Companies. Times change. Wausau works.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Johnson. Arrests by the FBI have taken the fun out of the kind of teenage computer tampering glamorized in the movie War Games and elsewhere. They've also raised some very serious ethical and moral questions for parents of computer enthusiasts and college professors in computer science departments. Computer crime is serious business. It's also big business. Willie Sutton, when asked why he robbed banks, replied, "Because that's where the money is." But the days of demanding it with a gun are nearly over. Today's biggest bank robbers ride in limousines and look like corporate executives, primarily because they are corporate executives. As Woody Guthrie used to sing, some men rob you with a gun and some with a fountain pen. And if you're too young to remember what a fountain pen looks like, you'll probably have no trouble following this next report by Gary Probst.
Robert Mars is a small businessman in Shreveport, Louisiana. He's in charge of a money order service. His firm is growing with the help of a computer system, the same system that was used against him by a computer thief.
And he began embezzling from us. And over about an 8-month period, he embezzled quite a bit of money from us.
The thief took at least $140,000. The man who stole the money is also the person who programmed the computer. Mars hired him as a consultant. The two men worked long hours on the project and became close friends. Mars had no idea that he was being set up.
Well, what he would do, he would actually steal blank money orders from the office, and he would write them. He also stole the check writing equipment and the little signature plate that we used to validate our money orders. He stole all of that, and then he would write the money orders and cash them. He would come in here and issue them on a computer, but he would issue them with a special code that no one knew about it but himself. And he had written in the program just a few extra lines that would read this code, and if this special code existed for this particular money order, it wouldn't show up anywhere. It would be on file, but it wouldn't show up anywhere. You know, there was no way to detect it.
It was in one of these fields here that he put this special code, which was an E. Like this field here is G for good, an S stands for stop paying, and a V is for void. And he had another one that only he knew about. It was an E code, which we decided must mean expropriate.
The only way we realized something was wrong was our bank balance kept going down and down and down, and for no explicable reason. And then we got to checking into it, and we called on our accountant over here to see if she could figure out what was going on, and she started to do an audit. That same day he came in, our programmer came in, found out that we were doing our audit. He broke in the building that night and stole some records, and in fact that's what he was arrested for, was for theft and breaking into the building.
At first, there was nothing Mars could do about the crime. The thief took records that only the programmer would know about, and that gave Mars a suspect. But the Shreveport police told him they could not make an arrest because internal embezzlement is a civil matter and not a criminal offense. Mars contacted the district attorney's office. 2 detectives were assigned to investigate the actual break-in. And when questioned about that, the thief confessed to the computer crimes. Assistant DA Robert Gillespie says it's a good example of how police and prosecutors are not always equipped to handle electronic theft.
The confusion is, I guess it's just a lack of familiarity and perhaps a lack of training by our particular officers to white-collar computer thefts.
Shreveport is a small city in a rural part of the South. It wouldn't seem to be a place with a lot of clever computer criminals, but Gillespie says the city is having its share of trouble.
With the use of the computer being more prevalent here in Shreveport, it is more common. I'm not sure that in the past it wouldn't have be done with a pencil rather than a computer. The trouble is that if someone is really very clever, they can conceal this theft for a period of time, which is a problem in every case. You lose witnesses. Some transactions are only logged on a computer, and unless the person who wrote the check, who paid, has a copy through his bank, which is microfilm, it'll never show up in the business. And in fact, I believe that's what happened in this. The company in this particular case had no documentation of what was actually paid into it, because as the checks were received, they were destroyed by the perpetrator.
Most computer crimes go undetected. They happen within large corporations where executives are concerned about bad publicity. The thief is fired, but the crime is not reported to police. One person who does learn about many crimes is Don Parker of the Stanford Research Institute. He's the nation's leading expert on computer crime.
Just in the last 4 years, we've had the largest bank embezzlement, $21.3 million. We had the largest funds transfer fraud, $10.2 million. We had the largest securities fraud, $53 million in Florida. We had the largest commodities fraud, $50 million in Denver, and the largest inventory fraud, $67 million in New York and Florida.
Nobody has a figure on how much is stolen each year through computers. Some law enforcement people say over $100 million in the United States. Others say more than $100 billion. Don Parker says the figure will continue to go up because most financial crimes will soon be computer crimes as we move away from a cash economy. Breaking into a computer is much more difficult than robbing somebody, but the amount of booty is often larger when a computer thief is involved.
Ultimately, actually all business crime is going to become computer crime, because none of it can happen without involving a computer in some way or other. So we'll probably, the term computer crime will disappear. And I think that the more we use computers, the safer business will come. That is, the incidence of business crime will go down. We'll have less business crime because of our capabilities to ultimately impose safeguards to a far greater degree than we have been in the past. But at the same time, an escalation will take place where the loss per case will grow dramatically.
In order to prevent computer theft, many large companies are setting up complex security systems. At First Wisconsin in Milwaukee, programmers are assigned to just a few segments of the total computer complex. They're denied access to any programs outside of their jurisdiction. That prevents browsing through the records. The bank also has its electronic transfer accounts in a separate secured system.
We have a separate wire transfer system on a mini computer that is physically separated, and we have installed software with many bells and whistles. We have the requirement for people to identify themselves through IDs and unique passwords. We have a variety of parameters, some set by us, some set by our customer, which requires a great deal of knowledge on the part of a person accessing our system.
Some companies are installing systems which read fingerprints or body chemistry. One system even reads blood flow in the vessels of the retina of a person's eye. Once you identify who was on the computer when a theft occurred, you have your culprit. Many small companies can't afford complicated security, but back in Shreveport, Robert Mars found an easy way to stop theft.
We balance every week now. We balance to our bank account, balance to the penny.
Extra precautions will have to be a part of these new tech times.
Not every kid who tries to break into a school's computer will graduate into a life of corporate crime, but there are some very serious ethical issues. Like, what about those school administrators who are trying to save money by encouraging students to copy computer programs illegally? But for thousands of years, the driving force behind innovations in communications has been the needs of the military. It's even more true in our day. If you want to know what will be going on in the corporate world of tomorrow and consumer electronics the day after that, look at what our military is doing today. Here with just such a look is syndicated columnist and television personality Jack Anderson.
Well, we live in the technological age, there's just no question about that. And in this marvelous age, in this frightening age, there's little privacy left. The Soviets have spy satellites, I think at last count 49 of them. Some of them are so sensitive that they can read the license plate on your car. We have spy satellites that actually can identify screws in a Soviet tank. I saw one satellite picture of a soldier standing on top of a tank, and with the help of a magnifying glass focusing on his face, I could tell that he hadn't shaved that morning. It was a picture taken from 200 miles in outer space. We're able to listen to conversations inside the Kremlin. We can listen to a Soviet pilot in the middle of Russia asking for landing instructions. About the only way the Soviets can communicate with one another and be safe from intervention would be by carrier pigeon. That means that any government, our government, can listen to our conversations.
If you have story ideas or comments, send them to the New Tech Times, 821 University Avenue, Madison, Wisconsin, 53706.
Home electronics expert Danny Goodman has joined us again this week, and our topic for review this time is the briefcase computers. Hi, Danny, and welcome back to the New Tech Times.
Hi, Nick.
We've seen quite a reduction in the size of the computer over the last 30 years, starting with a room full weighing 10 tons and 18,000 vacuum tubes to the one sort of the size of the refrigerator. What's happened since?
Well, they're getting smaller and smaller. The desktop computers, of course, everyone is familiar with, and there are a generation of what are called transportable, or about sewing machine-sized computers, which are just more compacted desktop machines. And now we're coming into an era of these lap computers, or also called briefcase computers.
Well, what's the difference? And they're also pocket computers that go in your shirt pocket. I mean, what's the purpose of these?
The smaller computers are best used for anyone who has to travel and has to compute in the field. And by compute, it could be anyone who needs calculations, maybe a writer, needs to have some kind of computing power on the road, on the go. But you want a computer that is usable. You can have pocket computers, as you say, but the display may be one line and very few characters across. The keys will be so tiny you'll have to really hunt and peck. That's the only way you can. But you go into a computer like this, and it has a full-size keyboard, a much more elaborate display.
So what you're telling us then is that the limitation on the size of these is really a human limitation.
Oh, sure.
The size of our fingers, the ability of our eyes to see a small screen, rather than the inability of the engineers to make the equipment smaller.
Yeah, these computers could be half the size without any problem if it wasn't for that human element.
Well, you've got a couple here. What are they, and what's the difference?
The two models here, this is the Radio Shack Model 100, and this sells for about $800 on up, depending on how much memory you have. Memory is limited to a maximum of about 32,000 typed-in characters. It does, however, have a built-in telephone modem, so you can send documents, send information, electronic mail over a telephone line. Just plug it literally just right into the...
Normally you'd need to buy another device called a modem that you plug the computer into and plug the telephone into.
Yeah, that's all built in there.
I
Very
see.
compact.
Whose is this?
All right, this is from NEC, which is a Japanese company. They have an American arm here.
Now, these are both made in the same manufacturing plant, aren't
That's
they?
right. And they are very similar.
Virtually identical.
In many respects, they are. The NEC, however, does not have that built-in modem we discussed. But its memory is not limited because you have the ability to add these cartridges. Now, each one of these cartridges holds as much memory as that entire Model 100.
Wow, so there are differences. Well, what would you tell our viewers? What's the bottom line? Should they buy one? Which of these features is most important?
If you have need for computing on the go, and then I would very strongly recommend them.
Thank you, Danny. A briefcase computer and a telephone can be your key to accessing a whole new world of information, thousands of pages of data, hundreds of computers around the country. But home television sets can also get textual information from local television stations. It's called teletext. Now, the number of pages are severely limited, and there's a question whether you're really going to want the service. Think about it as you watch this report from Ken Munt.
The electronic revolution. It's brought us marvels like video games, personal computers, video cassette recorders, cable TV with all its choices, and even a television show. Now the latest miracle, teletext. Well, it's not as glitzy as some of the other wonders, but it might be a whole lot more useful. Teletext is information sent through the air, like a TV signal, and is received in a TV set on the unused portion of the screen, the black line you see when your set is out of vertical adjustment. Right now, the only people who can actually receive the teletext service through the air live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Taft Broadcasting's Ginny Karp demonstrates what you could see on teletext if you lived in Cincinnati.
To get teletext, you have to be tuned to Channel 12 in Cincinnati. Turn the teletext button on the keypad, press enter, and there is the cover page of Electra. So let's start in the news section by going to seeing what kind of a news story is on page 102, again just by pressing the numbers on the keypad. Now we'll go for some weather information. This is a sample of the business pages, listing of the most active stocks. There's always a recipe of the day included. We'll see what it is on page 194. This leisure section also includes listings of various entertainment schedules and such things as movie reviews.
Before you get ready to move to Cincinnati, there's one thing you might want to consider. To receive teletext, you need to buy a decoder, and they cost about $300.
The price itself is something that will come down with mass manufacture. It's an initial price of $300, roughly at the retail level. They think in the long run, when the computer boards can be built into the sets, the increment could be as low as $50 to $75.
Now that's a bargain. But at those prices, there may be gold between those black lines. If the teletext operators can convince you to use their electronic newspaper, and if they can find advertisers willing to buy ads on these small screens. NBC, CBS, and Time Life, among other giants, have all started teletext experiments. Their systems have prettier pictures, but require an even more expensive decoder, so the experiments are all on hold. A few areas of the country have a teletext service that's available over cable, but you can only rent the decoders for $29.95 a month, and the pictures aren't any prettier either. Teletext will probably end up in your home someday and may bring you closer to instant information. But for now, that unused portion of your TV screen still remains black.
Ironically, it's our insistence on free private enterprise that's keeping that teletext line black. The Federal Communications Commission is refusing to set standards for decoders. And waiting for advertising to put teletext in the black is putting us years behind Europe. Meanwhile, what continues to fill our TV screens is sports. Now, I grew up in the shadow of a football stadium at the University of Iowa, lived next to the football stadium at the University of Texas as a college student. Now I'm back in Iowa, where a Texan named Hayden Fry has us cheering Hook 'em Hawks. So what does all this nostalgia have to do with computers, you ask? Well, you're about to find out. Computers have even changed the bases in baseball. Now it's first base, second base, third base, and database. Here's Dave Iverson's report.
Already won. Sports cliches are as important to the national pastime as hot dogs and beer. Read the sports pages during baseball season, and you're bound to find at least one of the following quotes. I seen the ball pretty good. I threw the ball pretty good. Or, I hit the ball pretty good. But baseball, the game that made famous wordsmiths out of Casey Stengel and Yogi Berra, baseball is now joining, you guessed it, the New Tech Times.
When you see the capability of a computer to put all that stuff, gather more of it, get it back to you quicker, the potential is actually, it's unlimited.
Tony La Russa is the manager of the Chicago White Sox, the champs of the American League West. La Russa used a computer this past season to catalog what certain hitters did against certain pitchers and vice versa. Never mind that the Sox lost to Baltimore in the League Championship Series. La Russa's White Sox obviously play pretty good, but there's more to this story. Listen again to the manager.
Right now, it's only a couple years into it, so our database is not real extensive, but as it grows, I think it'll have more capability.
Database? Did we hear database? Why, pretty soon we may hear ball players saying things like, I interface with the ball pretty good. At least White Sox ball players might. After all, they have a manager who doesn't ask questions. He queries.
Well, you don't have a lot of time to be, querying the computer for, what's your best matchup. You have to do that on the spot.
Queries and databases. It's enough to give Yogi Berra a slip disk drive. But baseball is, after all, gone for another year. Now footballs fill the air. Surely computer printouts won't replace running for daylight. Yes, on the campus of Southern Methodist University, the home of Mustang Mania and the Pony Express, the alma mater of Dandy Don Meredith, yes, at SMU, the computer has found a home. The program is called PASS, or PASS. It compiles information about upcoming opponents, their favorite plays and formations. It gives SMU coaches a better notion of what to expect on the football field.
We may want to know all the plays that an opponent has run inside the 10-yard line going in to score. Well, that would take a number of man-hours that we just don't have time to do. But we can feed the information in, the rough information in the computer, and it'll organize it and send it back to us in a way that we can use it. It's a big time saver for us.
So it's second and 13. Second and 13 at the minus or plus 46.
If you thought manager La Russa was something, wait till you listen in on these next conversations. The trick here is to translate football language into computer language. The coaches analyze the game films, noting the key information they want the computer to catalog.
The formation strength to us would be like left. That backfield would be I. The receiver set would be pro. So we would just put that down as we take the information off, put it on a form.
Whatever the terms, the computer doesn't seem to object and prints out the results in hours.
They've got a lot of plays, but the plays that they run the most is what the biggest number there. Anybody can figure that out. Play 16, they run 13 times as opposed to these others. So if I had to pick one play that I would prepare my team to stop, one of their favorite plays, it would be 16 draw.
But what to do about 16 draw, whatever that is? The answer is the game plan. Now that's a nice simple sports phrase, game plan.
Are you going to fold that? Yeah, I think if we fold it, see, in all those 40 fronts, that middle linebacker is reading through that center's block. If we block him back and pull our guard around and fold on it, then I believe we can hold him steady in there and he won't flow to the play.
Football terminology is clearly taxing enough without the benefit of a computerized, pardon the expression, database. But how did the game plan finally work? After all, to paraphrase Vince Lombardi, winning, not computing, is the only thing.
And the kick is good.
Part of the game plan worked fine, but the Mustangs, sad to say, had a few human errors no computer program could correct.
In motion is Adamson, who checked in. McElhaney picks it. The fullback, Charles, did not see the ball. He did not see it, and Texas has it at the 40.
SMU played pretty good, but not good enough to defeat highly rated Texas. But it wouldn't be fair to blame the 15-12 defeat on the computer. After all, a computer is only as good as the information it gets.
It's a confidence builder for us, too, in that we feel that, you know, if we feed information into the computer in the right manner, then we will get mistake-free information back. The human error is eliminated from it. So, of course, if you put mistakes into the computer, you'll get mistakes out of it, you know.
Now, of course, we're not saying the computer received wrong information before the SMU-Texas game, but you have to wonder if it maybe got just a little confused.
So the guard comes in and say, left eye pro 49 load option into the boundary, you know, so.
What was that, Coach?
So the guard comes in and say, left eye pro 49 load option into the boundary, you know, so.
Could it be that it's not computer language that's the problem, but our own? One last word from Tony La Russa.
We haven't got it really online like we really need.
Or as Yogi Berra liked to say, it ain't over till it's over.
It ain't over till it's over. Well, one of the advantages an old Longhorn has with a show like this is picking a football game where it was all over for SMU. But unfortunately, it's about over for you and me for this week's New Tech Times as well. It's been a varied package this time. Computer crime, spy satellites, briefcase computers, teletext, computers and sports. It's kind of like the story of the Texan at the airline counter. Where to, he was asked. Makes no difference, ma'am, I've got business everywhere. Well, New Tech Times has business everywhere, and I hope you'll be back with me to see where it takes us next week.
The New Tech Times has been brought to you through a grant from Wausau Insurance Companies. Times change. Wausau works.